Sweet.
What's up, man? How are you doing?
No complaints. Incredibly busy, but it's what I signed up for.
Cool. Well, good that you're able to hop on.
Oh, of
Cool.
course.
Well, Polymarket, just quick background for everyone, is a prediction market platform built on Ethereum. And like you guys have been like absolutely killing it in volume and open interest in the last few months. So maybe you want to talk about that first?
Yeah, I mean, I know that you guys have been interested in this sort of use case of blockchains for a really long time, and I was as well. And when you think about blockchains, like reasonably thinking the best use case for something that's kind of like has a wide applicability is this sort of general purpose markets platform, because you can skirt around the bureaucracy to really iterating quickly and trying a lot of different things, in terms of just like markets, free markets. And these legacy incumbents, they never really delivered. And I think that people in the space kind of conflated that with the lack of viability of this sort of vision. And we didn't really buy that. So, we took our stab at it, and I'm kind of obsessed with this stuff. I've read all the research. I've spoken to people who've tried similar things in the past, and we put it out. And obviously the first version we put out on Ethereum was mid-June, and we had like some early exciting traction, maybe like a couple $100,000 of GMV. And, we raised our seed, and, then we basically tore a lot of it down. We made some kind of crazy decisions where we were, Richard, you were one of the first people to try it, where we we deprecated MetaMask support, and we went for Magic Link and email login. And, we moved to layer 2, Matic, the first real like DeFi application to do that. And, it played out well, where we've gotten just a kind of exponential traction for, people who just love trading on Polymarket and this sort of subculture. And I would say like the most exciting thing is, it's the first time in DeFi where a product has really captured, significant demand that's just like super strong, that is outside of like typical DeFi degeneracy, that's uniquely enabled by blockchain. So I'm just really excited that I get to be a part of that, because I'm a total nerd about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also like to mention that I'm also one of the top traders on Polymarket right now. I just dropped a link in the chat to Polymarket Wales, which is some community member named Jeff. He's a good friend. He built this website just to track like all the top traders and like kind of how much they have bet, which is like pretty insane.
Is he your friend from beforehand, or you became friends with him?
Yeah, we've been chatting on Telegram a lot lately.
Okay, through Polymarket Wales.
Through Polymarket, yeah.
Very funny. So Polymarket's making friendships too,
Yeah.
You can't make this up.
Cool. You touched on this briefly, but so like prediction markets have been around on Ethereum for a while. Like Augur was like the first ICO on Ethereum, and Augur's been around for a while. Like almonds also exist. But like, why is it that Polymarket has had like way more traction than like others?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, in crypto, because there's literally been so few things that have traction, of the few that have, a lot of the CEOs are kind of in the lineup for today. We just really, focused on demand and building a great product and hearing out users and, finding what works and where the friction is and trying to reduce that friction. It's not rocket science, right? Like it's just pragmatic, practical approach and good execution. And I think that, you look at what we've accomplished in 6 months with limited capital and what these legacy incumbents have accomplished in 6 years with endless capital and multi-billion-dollar valuations. It just, all it comes down to is just savviness and execution, Obviously, like we're really passionate about the vision, but I think so is everyone who's sort of privy to kind of this design space. But when it comes down to, in the early days where people were like, how are you going to compete against these people? And, now it's like not even a question. So, I think we've just out executed, candidly, if I may say so myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely what I've noticed with you and the whole team. One question that like people like getting or who are new to prediction markets, like one question they often ask is like, why should you have prediction markets on Ethereum? Like what's so different about them when like sports betting markets predict it, and like political betting markets like those others like already exist in the traditional world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we think of it as information markets, and obviously there's speculation, and like people can probably get similar speculative positions in sort of centralized alternatives. Um, but the thing that's really exciting for us and why we see this is like one of the biggest things anyone can build in the world right now is the byproduct of having these free markets where there's no like intermediation and there's no interference by some sort of gatekeeper, is you have this public good that's like a mecca of real-time unbiased information where you go on Polymarket and you can just see, oh, this is what the odds of this happening are in the future. And the more and more that we build that out, both in terms of just like positioning markets for that, but also like as part of the product, um, the more that like people have more kind of unbiased and like reliable information to make better decisions. And at a time where like misinformation and fake news, like in the first world, the biggest problem in the world, the biggest problem, there's just too much for there to be some sort of incumbent that's got their hands on all the switches. And that could manifest itself in like being a bookmaker. So when you're on a lot of these sports sites, you're trading against someone who's like making a book and setting the odds manually, which just isn't as accurate for price discovery as something like Polymarket. But also just being able to iterate, like this idea of permissionless finance and like permissionless innovation allows like scrappy people to kind of iterate on a product and get it to market a lot quicker rather than sort of having to get a green light from bureaucratic organizations every step of the way. So, if we weren't building on blockchain, there's no doubt that we wouldn't have been able to really deliver a product like this.
Yeah, like speaking of like those like centralized incumbents, like there's like definitely counterparty risk for like trading on those platforms. Like I've had this experience with like betting on political markets. So like Predicate like caps you at I think like around $800 for trades. But you want to like bet more on like political markets, and you have to go to these like sketchy offshore sites where you have like no idea if you're gonna get your money off of the website. So I think that's what drove a lot of new people to Polymarket, especially around the election.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And like speaking of that, like you guys got like crazy volume around the election. I think there was like $30 million in volume on like the Trump market.
Yeah, I mean that was after the election.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was after election. Yeah. You should talk a little bit about that, like the inauguration market.
We found really strong product market fit in these highly partisan, contentious topics where you've kind of got these, I guess, liberal leaning kind of, they assume themselves to be rational people who think that they're betting on a sure thing. And then you have people who maybe have more contrarian views and, figured that really had conviction that Trump was going to pull something, and they say, oh, we can, make a lot, so we're going to take this side. And it's funny to just see that manifest in the odds and in the pricing. And it's funny because like people can, debate each other and be like, oh, you're wrong, this, that. But the way that that really dissipates is when you let people put their money where their mouth is. And there's this coincidence of wants with people like that, where usually the access between, like the sort of customer segment that's trading, that's buying one side versus the other, just are not really, there's not much overlap, and kind of Polymarket has found itself there. So it's been really exciting. We can run markets on anything really, but this is just where, it's being pulled out of the product. We're like, this is what our current user base really wants, and they kind of demand it more and more. And it's got this flywheel that has proven to be quite strong. So, it's always going to be, we intend to expand far wider than just this vertical, but it's always going to be, something that I think will have like a North Star in, kind of our long-term vision of like sticking through with that, with that.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that people can like finally have skin in the game and their beliefs and like their sources of information. Like, on Twitter right now, like Twitter Discord is like right now it's like kind of a shit show, where like people like loudmouths just like put out tweets without like thinking twice. But if you could, have like a bet on your beliefs button like next to a tweet and like, take the other side of the trade. And like once people actually have skin in the game, then like people are think a lot more about like what they actually believe. And like it was interesting seeing this like manifested in the inauguration market. So, kind of for context for everyone here, about a month before the inauguration happened, Trump odds were trading around 90 cents. So basically, if you thought that that Trump was gonna become the next president, then you can like make a pretty good big return from that. But if you thought otherwise, then that's still like a 10% return, which that was a pretty interesting time to watch the markets.
Yeah. So Richard's saying that it was like 90% that he won, meaning that you could take the other side, people who sort of still believe there was enough demand for on the side that he would, where it kind of sustained this, 8 to 10 cents per share pricing. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not really a politician. I don't really follow politics. I don't claim to have any edge. I just follow the prices, and that's what the market was saying. And it's fun. It's fun to follow along. There were a lot of people glued in.
Yeah. Also about like prices, like one interesting thing I noticed about the election is so like the pollsters got it even more wrong this time around compared to like the 2016 election. But Polymarket got the odds like pretty exact. I think there's like Biden 60 cents before the election, which in hindsight I think that's a pretty fair odds. Same with the two Georgia runoff elections where it was like it leaned slightly Democratic, which like now in hindsight those odds were priced correctly. So I always have this idea that prediction markets can make like big inroads in the polling industry because like the polling industry is like a multi-billion-dollar industry that's like entire campaigns like depend on their data to like make decisions on how they're going to campaign, and like if they're making decisions on bad data, then it's just like political donations, like money that's just like going down the drain.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many applications of these free markets. Some people were criticizing about this sort of market pricing the night of, but like there's so many forces that go into a market, and like there were European bookmakers offering crazy odds for Trump that were eventually arbed with Polymarket and kind of other liquid markets for the election that I think wasn't really thought through. Like a lot of the people who maybe were critics weren't really thinking through, but all things considered, if you think from like a macro perspective, then yeah, they're way more accurate. Because at the end of the day, the polls, people trade on that data, and if they really do believe it, it should trade, at parity, but it doesn't. So, there's definitely something more to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you talk more about how the Polymarket Oracle works? Because I think that's like one important differentiation between Polymarket and like other platforms.
Yeah, I mean, architecturally, it's a distinction between like Polymarket and Augur, but Augur also just doesn't work. So, like just now someone spent like $10-20 and like $10 million is like locked up or something. So for like another 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? I have that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like someone disputed the result, and then like now it goes through like a challenge period.
The thing at the end of the day is that you just want the market's result correctly. So we have kind of a committee-based model, which we intend to sort of further decentralize over time. That it's like so far all the markets have resolved accurately. So we eventually will have some probably more elaborate creative mechanisms to solve for that. But for the time being, it's every market has its resolution source predefined, as well as like market conditions in the description, and markets get resolved according to that in a sort of high OPSEC, committee model.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Also, like architecturally about Polymarket, like you touched on this earlier, but like you guys were really like the first big application to move to layer 2 to like Matic, and like you really like made I remember in October when we were chatting, you made like the big push to go outside of crypto natives to like mainstream, by like having like gas-free trading, like fiat on-ramps, and like relayers who are like paying the gas to onboard. Like, could you talk about like, how that process was, like how it turned out?
Yeah. Look, we knew that we had early product market fit and there was demand, and that the ETH fees were insane and basically created a disincentive for trading a lot. It just unnecessarily restricted the product. So we're not just trying to be like another sort of DeFi ecosystem player where people have to go and pay high fees. Like we're trying to build an end product that happens to utilize blockchain tech under the hood. And with that spirit in mind, we just started exploring alternative, ways to scale. And I think like a lot of people thought we were crazy when we told them we were moving to a different chain and we were using Magic Link and not MetaMask. But in hindsight, it took our TAM and just made it far greater. And it's a great decision. And a lot of people are following suit now. But I think that there's still is part of the drawbacks from being a pioneer, and kind of setting the standard for that is like there's a lot of infrastructure that's just not there yet, and it's become like we've grown so fast with this that and like ETH is so expensive that even just the bridging, the withdrawal and deposits are really difficult to sustain based on the initial way that we architected it. So that's something that we're like super highly prioritizing to fix. But all things said, like we were able to sustain and support adoption that just wouldn't have been possible on layer one, because the people who are using Polymarket, they don't necessarily use MetaMask. In a lot of cases, they don't need to deal with CE phrases. They don't need to understand how paying ETH gas works. And so those are the decisions we made product wise, and it did pay off.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an idea of like what percentage of users are like non-crypto natives?
It's a good question. I would assume the majority. I don't have the exact answer because the onboarding flow is just the same for everyone. So even if someone really is crypto native, they still have to go through this way. But the reasoning for that is like someone who's big into MetaMask can still easily send USDC in to Polymarket, but someone who doesn't know anything about MetaMask or the way Ethereum works, like they're screwed. You know what I mean? They just are gonna the friction and the obstacles for them to onboard is like so high. So that was the reasoning behind the trade-offs. But we're not cemented on anything in particular. We're always just thinking about how we can lower friction and better improve the user experience.
Mm-hmm. And like I think you guys are like really the first like crypto app to like break out of the crypto native mold. It's like once you've been in the crypto native like ecosystem for so long, you kind of forget like what the whole onboarding process is, because like you have MetaMask already installed, like you already have a Coinbase account, and like you forget like what it took to get your first ETH or your first USDC or first Bitcoin.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. I mean, look, for us, it's about just understanding the users, and yeah, we've been able to be the first people to pull that off, which has been exciting, but it doesn't come without its growing pains.
Mm-hmm. Got it. What's next for Polymarket? Like what's upcoming and exciting on your roadmap?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, look, we've all this growth that we've had, and at this point we're like the most valuable DeFi company that especially like pre-token, but like an actual product that doesn't have a token. There's a lot of verticals, and obviously bringing on more people is just of critical importance, because now we've gotten possibly too big for our bridges as like a small core team. But yeah, I mean, look, for us, there's a really strong community. You've been in the Discord and the Telegram and the Twitter and everything. We want to be bringing that on the site and letting people be more social about the markets in the product to improve retention. There's also different market structures we want to explore. So we're using the current AMM, but that's not really a one-size-fits-all solution. So we're looking to do some R&D there and potentially add some alternative mechanisms for people trading, and yeah, and then just adding a lot of new markets. Figuring out once we get the pipes accurate, where onboarding and offboarding works, and there's lower friction, and that can kind of sustain growth. We want to just grow and expand to new verticals, because the marginal cost of us bridging to new markets is pretty much zero. So that's like an insane position to be in as someone who's building a product and a marketplace. So that's kind of where our mind is at with that stuff. And I'm really excited.
Yeah, I think the social experience is really exciting, because social networks are like completely ripe for disruption, like Facebook and Twitter and like incumbents, and like social network or something like built on prediction markets, or like that whole experience like is really powerful, where you can have like statements on posts on the social network, and like also like proof that of like them having skin in the game based on like them betting on their beliefs. And like Facebook has like experiment product called the Forecast app. But it's just like kind of a toy because you can't actually bet real money on it. But I think Polymarket and like seeing that there's like definitely a big market to go after.
Yeah, it's limitless in its potential.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, that's about all I had. Anything else?
On my end, I hope people found this interesting.
Cool.
Anyone can go sign up for Polymarket or reach out to me. I'm not hard to find, and I'm happy to chat.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Shayne.